Welcome to the 2 + 2 = 5 podcast, the place where the rules are optional, the math really adds up, and the questions matter more than the answers. I'm joined today back as a full hosting panel with our co-hosts Lauren and Paul, and we've also got a very special guest today in Russell. Good to see you all. How is everyone?
Doing good after the weekend.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me along today.
No worries.
Hey, welcome to the podcast, Russell. I'm going to start off with the first question as everybody's gone quiet. So, for the last year or so, Russell, I've been looking to meet people that have been there and done what I want to do. You know, built companies, followed dreams, and everything like that. So when I saw your name pop up as a potential guest, I wouldn't say, go as far as dream come true, but it was, definitely something I've been looking for in the last 6 months to a year, to speak to somebody who really pushes the barriers and, makes a difference. And, you with your background at Kainos, working all the way through to CEO, now going on to non-exec directors roles. But I just wanted to, first of all, congratulate on your success.
Thank you.
And maybe ask the question what started it all, what made you feel like, no, I can go all the way and, I'm going to be a person that's going to make a difference?
Well, I guess I never actually thought that from the start. It was never a grand plan. I think what it did well was take advantage of opportunities that came my way. I was always curious about other things. So I studied electrical engineering at Queen's University in Belfast, went on to be a software engineer. Probably wasn't a very good software engineer, in truth. Can say that now. But I had the opportunity at an early stage to become a team leader. I'm probably a little bit young or early in my career even to be doing that. But I thought, that's interesting, I'll give it a go. And it did, and then I quickly became a manager. So I think, Paul, rather than it being a grand plan about what I wanted to do, I was open to do new things. And when the opportunities came along, I tried to grab them with both hands and do the best job I could when it was presented with me.
It's interesting you say that, because I guess, first of all, did you create those opportunities, or were they opportunities that came up just because the company was growing and you were at the right place?
Yeah, I guess there's probably a bit of both, to be fair. I think, you definitely have to be, in a growing company, it helps, right? And I've always said this to people that, growing's great when you're talking to shareholders or, whoever. But I'd say for most people in the organization, it's like, well, what does this mean for me? And it means new opportunities, new challenges. So it wasn't the right place at the right time, make no bones about that. But I think I probably helped position myself for most of them as well, to be able to step into that and take advantage of it.
It's interesting you say advantage of opportunities when they came up, because opportunities, I guess, they're sitting in front of all of us, right? So what do you think separated you from, I'm guessing, the 500 or 1,000 odd people that were working at Kainos throughout that time?
Good question. I wouldn't necessarily say that I was a whole lot better than anybody else. Like, I worked with a lot of very talented colleagues. I think in some cases I had a slightly different take on things. And like I said, probably enjoyed quite a lot of success for the teams that I started to lead as well, which then it sort of led me then to be, I guess, trusted with bigger, better things. But, and I did that at a stage in my career where I was leading the support team, and then I was asked to lead digital services or digital transformation within Kainos, which was a new thing, and I wasn't given a particularly tight remit around that. It was like, try and grow a business, which I did. And I was like, I guess I brought a lot of people along that journey with me, and I was blessed to having a lot of, very talented people work alongside me. So it wasn't, while I had the privilege of leading that, it wasn't me just doing all the work. Far from it. It was very much a team effort.
Well, one of the things that I have difficulty with in trying to lead and trying to build a team and trying to build a business is having a family, young kids at the same time. You know, just because I miss them so much when I have to go away overnight and go to Rising, let's say, for 3-4 days, it just gives me anxiety leaving them. Like, how did you were telling us earlier, you've got grown up kids. I'm assuming they were babies when you were first at Kanos.
Yeah, they weren't always grown up. So I have 4 daughters, married to Deborah, and I've got 4 daughters. So Deborah's very supportive of me, throughout my working life. It's not to me say it was all easy. It wasn't. She worked full time for most of that period as well. So there's an awful lot of juggling. And I would say supportive. In one particular case, I was very fortunate. I did a couple of executive education courses in the States. I was out in 2010 to the Darden Business School at University of Virginia, which is just beautiful. It was a 4-week course. Our youngest was 2012, not 2010. Our youngest had just turned 2.
Wow, yeah.
Our eldest was 10. I remember this because the Olympic torch came through Belfast at that time. It was getting pictures sent of the Olympic torch. But we also had floods in Belfast. There was torrential rain. 2 of our kids had chickenpox. They all ended up having nits. And when you get long, dark hair, it's not a nice thing to have to do the nit combs. And the people in the same cohort as me in Darden were sort of keep me going, saying, actually, you're having the plagues in Belfast when you're not here, because that's what it felt like. Everything just kept happening. So yeah, at times it was tough. And then, always did a fair bit of travel, more like weekly travel, like away 1-2 days at a time. But even just for drop-offs, pickups, I was always conscious that I left a bit of a mess behind. You try to make up for it weekends by doing, more of the running around at that stage. But it is hard. And well, I'm sure you got this yourself. Trying to get that right mix. It was fortunate that work was somewhat flexible, even in a fairly senior position. I always tried to get finished up work in the office, because it was all office based for most of that time. Fairly sharp, get home, do the dinners, and then I would do a bit of work later on at night. So I'd always put in the hours, but I tried to do it in the way that fit it in around family life as well.
Is there anything you've picked up in the last 25 years that you now feel like this is a skill I must pass on to my kids to prepare them for life?
No, my kids think that I have no skills to pass on to them. So they're at the stage where
mine too, but he wants to be a YouTuber and he's right. I have 0 skills in that side.
Yeah, they just think at times I'm an idiot, and what would I know? So they're not at the stage where they're ready to listen to me.
What about at work? When you're building teams, you said you had, in your early career, you had success in building that, and that maybe put you in the eyes of management to progress. What do you look out for in your team?
You get all the sort of usual, things like, want people to be, hardworking. You want people to be aligned with you, bought into what you're doing. That's not all on them. That's partly on me as well. You're looking for competence is an absolute must. So you need people to be competent in whatever role that they have, and they've similar values as you. And I think if you've got that alignment in values and what you're actually trying to achieve, you can go a long way together.
100%.
I was just gonna ask on that. I mean, something that you've touched on quite a lot already in this is the fact of you leading teams. I mean, obviously you've shown success, but what do you think the most important trait of a good team leader is?
I think being open and clear with people, because it's not, we talk about success or growth or progression. It's not always linear. You have setbacks along the way. So I think being open, being clear with people, even when things aren't going the way you'd necessarily hoped, talking your way through that, actually working through problems with them together. I like to take on board things that other people are telling me. Doesn't mean that I'd take all of them on board, but I like to listen to different points of view. And if I don't agree with someone, I'll tell them why I don't agree with them. That's fine. I think particularly the leadership team I had within digital services part of the business, we had some great debates. We always ended up, smiling at the end of it. But yeah, we had some proper disagreement about things, which was really healthy. So yeah, I think that sort of openness and being straight with people, I think people would always know where they stood with me.
Nice.
And then
go on, you first, Lauren.
Yeah, if you were to pick something out of the last 25 years as one of your greatest successes, what would you say that was?
Probably overall having a pretty happy marriage for the last 25 years. I would rate that above any success that I had in work, to be honest. You can add it up in lots of different ways, but generally I'd say I'm quite, content's probably a bit bland, but I would be a fairly happy person. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. If I'm not, I'll do something different. So for me, that's been successful. We've had a lovely family here. I've enjoyed doing fun things at work as well. That doesn't mean it was easy. A lot of the times, things that we were doing were hard. They were disruptive, but they were fun. I think, maybe call out it's not just a particular highlight, but more the theme of a highlight from a work success point of view is when I would describe some of the work that we've done, particularly in UK government, and people would go, "I've used that service. It's great," and you just go, oh, "Nice."
Yeah.
It's really satisfying.
Yeah, 100%.
In terms of people that I want to just touch back on your, spotting the opportunities again, and really taking the opportunities when they came to you. What advice would you give to youngsters, to anyone that's working in a job and they don't quite know where they want to take your career? Like you said, they're in a similar perhaps where you started. You didn't really have a plan. What is it that you did at work then? If you didn't have a plan or where you potentially wanted to go, what was your mindset?
Yeah, I guess it always says to people about be curious, go and ask questions, find out about things. Whether that's within your own work environment, whether it's in your customer environment, whether it's with your friends or colleagues, ask questions, find out, and see. And I find even over the course of the last year where I haven't been in full-time work, I've spoken to lots of people and I've asked lots of questions there as well. And it's helped me to sort of figure out what I want to do next. So I think that can be really useful. And there's unexpected things come from that too. That just pops up. Keep being curious.
And did you ever have any fear going for any of these opportunities? Because I think that's the thing that makes everybody freeze, right?
Fear, probably not. I wouldn't say, I'm not afraid, terrified sort of thing. I think there's various stages, particularly as you start to grow and do bigger things, or a few times where you step back and you go, wow, we're doing this, but get the head down, get on and do it anyway, even though there's a realization this is a bit different, or, it's a bit of a bigger thing than you're previously doing. So yeah, I don't want to, don't say that like in an arrogant sort of a way, but, back to, I always believe the people around me that we could achieve what we set out to do.
And that's the skill set to have in its own. It's probably is something that, did you create that mindset of your own, of being inquisitive and asking questions, or is that something that came to you naturally?
I think it probably came to me naturally. I remember even as a child, quite a young child, I would ask questions all the time about things and probably irritated uncles, aunts, parents. And I could see that in my own children, where there's two of them in particular will ask questions, some of them seemingly stupid questions, some of them very good questions at times. And you look and you go, I can remember doing stuff like that. Wow.
Well, once they leave education, if they want a job, you know where to call, right?
Yeah. I could definitely testify asking a question, Russell, for sure.
And at university or before you started work, what did you study?
Oh, I studied electrical engineering at Queen's. And at that stage, I studied engineering because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I thought it was a good base degree to give me keep my options open. And actually, during my degree, it was sponsored by a company called DuPont, who was famous for making lacquer. And I ended up not working there. And, a great experience, doing all my various work placements there, which was good. But it wasn't for me.
Did you go down the degree route, or did you do an apprenticeship?
No, I was down the degree route. It was a slightly funny way through my degree because you're my doorbell. Most people just go in, they do their degree, they might do a placement year and come out. There was a sponsorship scheme in Northern Ireland, which is partly funded by the government, partly funded by industry. So I actually did a pre-university year out in industry. So I worked in the Maydown site, the DuPont site in Maydown, which is near Derry in Northern Ireland. And at the very start of that, I also worked in one of the government training centres. So I learned, random skills like welding and working in lathes and milling machines and electrical installation, which again, I really enjoyed. But it was really different having gone through quite a normal academic route, doing A-levels. And then suddenly you're out there working with people who are serving the 16, 17-year-olds who are starting their apprenticeships and going through that route. And then when I went on to the DuPont site, I was out working with mechanics. They were out in the field, which again is completely fascinating when you're not used to it, and you learn all sorts of different skills. So then, normal degree after that, 4 years, but every year I did my summer placement with DuPont again, apart from 1 year when I was part of the student exchange scheme, and I went to Japan and I did a 10-week placement in Japan, which again was really eye-opening.
Sorry, go on, Ruth. Do you have a question?
I was just going to ask. Obviously, you mentioned that you obviously did that placement. There was areas that you really enjoyed, but then obviously you moved into something else. So, was there a particular point that you knew that there was another path you wanted to take, or was it just one of those opportunities that arose?
Yeah, I think as I got to probably third and fourth year of my degree, it was a 4-year degree here. I probably enjoyed the software side of it more than any of the hardware side or the the heavy power generation side of electrical engineering. And I started to think about other jobs in that sort of space around the software engineering. And there were a few companies who, were taking people on in Belfast at that time. I graduated in 1999. The industry was starting to really take off, I guess, around Belfast, and I was fortunate I had some job offers around then.
Nice.
The rest is history when it comes to the IT world.
Yeah, indeed. But even at that stage, I also had a job offer at that stage with BT, who were a much more established organisation in Kainos. Kainos had 170 people when I joined, and I turned down the job with BT. It didn't feel quite right, and I'd more like the feel about Kainos. I guess it's one of those sort of defining things where you think you think if you join a smaller organisation, maybe other opportunities will come along, and it proved to be right in my case.
In your when you first joined Kainos, they were just doing the software engineering side, right? There was no Workday at that time for them.
No Workday. We started doing some work with Workday around about 2011, thereabouts. So it was very, very different. We did a lot. We were still working quite closely with Fujitsu at that stage, and it was all just around the core software engineering skills.
There was actually a fun fact about Kainos at one point. It was one of the hardest places to get into. It was even harder to get into than Oxford University, and that said something. Yeah.
I'm sure you would say that, Lauren.
No, that's actually true speaking. So it is. That's true speaking. It was. Yeah.
Lauren's completely right. We had a lower number of people were accepted than I think it was either Oxford or Harvard or somewhere like that there. We had a lower percentage.
Yeah, there was such a high volume of applications, and just there was a lot less offers sometimes.
Look, let me assure you, the bar was still very high.
Yeah, it was. Did you ever have any mentors in your time when you were sort of growing through the ranks? And is there any kind of call out mentors that you would sort of say, yeah, that's someone I would have went to and still would go to if you were stuck?
Yeah, I've had a few different mentors. One of the people who are also very supportive of me as well, like John Lillyhout, who was our chair. Again, I had a good relationship with John and worked closely with him. John was very, he'd been around a lot of corners. He'd previously worked in large organizations. I found him very useful, but probably the one, there have been other great people that I've chatted to over the years as well and would still go to. One that I would call out, I was fortunate to work with an executive coach over quite a period of time. And I found the conversations I had with her to be really, really useful. And probably initially about understanding more about myself and doing a lot of work with that, and then understand the dynamic of me working within the team and how some of that actually landed. And then how we would support each other as a team. So, again, it's not, coach sounds like, quite a formal coach, and you get coaches who just ask you questions and you always have to come up with the right answer yourself. Christine wasn't like that. She worked in the industry. There were a bit of coaching, a bit of mentoring, and, bringing in a lot of, I guess, different skills that she had. But one of the first things she asked me to do was do a SWOT analysis of myself, which is one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And it was cringeworthy. And I think it was in version 5 of it before she would actually accept it and go through it with me. And then I started to question why I'd written everything down and what every word meant. And I said, oh, just stop, please. But it was really, really useful because, I remember there's things that I'd written down about maybe a weakness about myself at that stage, where she was starting to ask, why do you say that? And it's actually perceptions about yourself rather than reality. And once you start to break down some of those things, I think it can be really enlightening.
When did you decide to take up a coach?
I don't know if at that stage if I decided just by myself or was encouraged. So it was definitely offered. It sounded that like it was some sort of a threat that I had to work with a coach. It wasn't like that. I was given the opportunity to work with a coach. And after, tried it for a couple of sessions, thought actually, what, I think this is really useful for me. When would that have been? Probably about 2013, 2014, sometime around then. So we're going back quite a period of time. I was still, being semi-regular contact with Christine. I had a call with her about 2 months ago.
And are you going to mentor anybody yourself?
Well, you mentioned earlier about being a sort of non-exec, now which I am in another smaller organisation in Belfast called Instill, and I've been on the board there now from about March, by the end of March. I've enjoyed that. They're a smaller organisation, less mature. There's some people who I know I've worked with before here in Instill, and there's other people who are coming through. I don't limit my engagement just to board meetings. I tend to meet some of the people outside of, the normal formal board channels and have conversations with them about what they're doing. And I wouldn't necessarily call it formal mentoring, but I guess it is a form of mentoring where, I'm able to share my experiences, ask them about what they're doing, and maybe make some suggestions of things they should be looking at. So I think it's an ongoing piece.
I think especially, Luke and Lauren, from the millennials onwards.
Yeah, thanks.
So we're safe, Russell. Especially when you get to Gen Z onwards, there is there's a sort of trait that I feel like these young kids have, that they expect things to be given to them, or they expect that everybody will bend over for them. But it's quite evident from your whole career that actually, although you weren't expecting things to happen for you, you were keeping an eye out and spotting opportunities, creating your own sort of line that you want to go down. what advice do you have for people that are have just graduated over the last couple of years, or are graduating over the next couple of years, sitting there, telling the employers, no, I want to work from home and I want to do this, and they've got a list of demands that need to be met. What would you do with a team member like that?
I think the younger generation coming through, I think it is more difficult to actually, in some respects, to work with them, because I think there is a certain element of that about being clear maybe about what they want to do. I'm not sure that it's all necessarily wrong either.
No, definitely not.
So I think there's definitely a point to it, but I think what I would encourage them to do is maybe wind some of it back a little bit. And I see this with my own kids as well, where they can be, say, unreasonable about things. In their own heads, they think that it's perfectly right. So I think, that's what I would try and encourage, graduates to still get their sleeves rolled up, get on and do things. There needs to be a wee bit of give and take here. And it's fine to be clear about what you want, but you also need to understand that there's a balance here, that you're working in an organisation, that the organisation needs to get the right things from you as an employee or as an individual.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that it's not the wrong thing, because personally, I think it's been around for a long time. Let's take you and I, for example, slightly different age groups. You've sort of went out into a job, worked hard, and wanted to know exactly, when there was an opportunity there, you were in a position where you were ready and you had got yourself ready to spot them. Myself, I've gone after the same thing. Pretty much, it's been asking questions. Learned everything I know from speaking to people, and even, I don't have a degree, so 100% of my education comes from asking questions and speaking to people. But I guess the little difference between you and I was that I, at the age of 30, sort of made myself knew 20, 25 years, by the time I'm 50, 55, what I wanted to achieve, or with the direction I wanted to go in. And I went for it and I made it happen. And I think that wasn't something, and I think that's maybe a little bit of the thing that the new generation is missing, is that they know what they want, but they're not willing to work for it. I put 10 years of work once I knew exactly where I wanted to go to be happy. And that meant sometimes having jobs that I didn't really enjoy, because I knew I needed to learn that in order to make it happen.
Yeah.
But I don't, how do we get that message across to the youngsters, that these things can happen, but you got to work for it? Because right now, I think I had one graduate about 2 years ago, came out of university and said, I've got a university degree, so I deserve a 35k a year salary, and I deserve this type of role, that type of role. And I was like, okay, yeah, wrong person.
Yeah, I think people like that, you need to chat that through with them, just to understand, try and help them to understand why that's not the case, and that there is a different way to look at it. But I think you take, your graduates these days, everything in their lives has been instant for them. If you want to make a phone call, you can pick up. Well, actually, you don't make phone calls now, but if you want to message someone, you pick up your phone, you can message. If you want to buy something, you just order it and it's there the next day. You don't have to wait. So it's hard to make that leap, but from a work point of view, you might have to wait or learn or whatever.
100%. Talking about waiting and... Sorry, go on, Lauren, you first.
Yeah, it's not all roses, so it's not... Sometimes you do have to realise it does take rolling the sleeves up. There's always jobs out there that they might not sound fun, but they have to be done in order to try and achieve that goal. I know in my time, like, jobs that I've done in the past, is like, some of them I don't agree with, but you got to do them just to work through them and get to the next step and move on.
Yeah.
Before I started core team, I was working at home quite a lot, and after having worked in an office for like 15, 20 years to then go into an environment where I got to work from home, I just couldn't grasp it. Sometimes, like, you got all of a sudden you're waking up when you want, and you're waking up 10 minutes before you come to your desk, and then you take that slightly longer break and you finish that slight few minutes earlier, and all of a sudden you're doing 3 hours of work a day, right? And it was difficult at that time to get used to that environment. And I think a lot of kids nowadays, the environments are changing as well. What sort of advice would you have? You built a remote team, right? Or some of your team were remote or working mostly remote. How did you manage them and get success that way?
Yeah, actually, I think a lot of organisations are back 2-3 days a week in the office. Not all. I think particularly young people some of them can underestimate the value of actually spending time with other more experienced colleagues. I'll counter that as well and say that a lot of young people that I would have seen in work actually value community work for the social interaction piece as well. But it's understand that's the way that you learn. Well, I'm sure you were the same, where you sort of absorb things from being around people, and it's not necessarily anything formal, but you just pick up stuff, a conversation in the kitchen or whatever, and just being able to have that bit of a chat. It's different, and I think it's very hard to put a value on it, but I think it's so important to be doing that.
Absolutely.
How do you think the technology changes coming up? I guess and you can tell me if you're not. Are you exploring AI at all? Before I ask.
Yeah, a little bit. Not a little bit for me personally, but also in the business. Both in Kainos, when I was there, we were exploring AI very strongly, but also I'm seeing it in Still, where again we're slightly less close to it, but everybody's pushing on.
What advice do you have for all the configuration consultants that are asking what's going to happen to my job?
It's probably going to change. But look, for me, working in technology, it hasn't remained stationary in my time in the industry. And it's not going to sort of stay the same now. It's going to keep changing. But other roles will open up as well. Other things, other challenges. So I think you need to be prepared that your role could change, and that's for me that's fine. But it's what other skills you can develop, then that you can be adaptable and do other things as you go along. Because just because, for example, we all went to the web and got onto the public cloud mainly, doesn't mean that a whole lot of jobs disappeared in the industry. A whole lot of new jobs opened up actually as well. So I think there's that piece about this process of continuing to learn and continuing to adapt what you're doing.
That's the similar thing I've been saying to everybody as well. Look, configuration consultant roles, they're not going to disappear. They're going to change.
Yeah.
And have a look at how AI is built, how to communicate with it. And I think, if you're a configuration consultant now, you will probably become a really, really good prompt engineer that makes systems work for you. And that's start developing that. I'm conscious we've kept you longer than the 20-25 minutes that we normally keep everybody. I want to ask, you have a very, very clear equation that you've written for yourself. It's not the norm 2 + 2 = 4. It's not the norm that you're going in there, you're waiting for jobs and you're applying for them, you're doing this. You went there and made it happen. Even though you didn't create an end goal of this is where I want to get to, from what I gather is when you got to the job, you wanted to be the best you could be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, and as I mentioned about working with my coach, what I finally got to admit as part of that process was that it was competitive. I knew that, but I wouldn't have said it to people, and I actually started, and you kind of get this for, it's, even when we were going through sales opportunities, I really hated losing. We were going to bid for something, I wanted to win. It's not that I wanted to win at all costs, but I wanted to win fairly and do a great job.
I lose sleep, Russell. When I don't win, I lose sleep, especially if I know I could have done more to win.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, the next one, I lose it for a week.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to Workday consultants out there that are perhaps going to go through now a technology change over the next 5 years? So there's going to be probably a whole lot of retraining that needs to be done. New people that are coming into the industry, youngsters that are looking for a job. I guess, all of them could take inspiration from you. You've worked your way up. What would you say to them about creating the right equation for them?
Yeah, look, I think it goes back to, be curious about what else there is. Keep asking questions, keep exploring things, experiment with stuff as well. I don't mean like big sort of bet the farm type experiments, but try doing some things differently or seeing what else you can do. Like you mentioned about, configuration, will some of the configuration work change? certainly expect that it will. My inkling is that some of the boring stuff will disappear first. And for me, I'm very happy not to be doing boring work. I'd rather be doing the more interesting pieces. So it's how do you continually move yourself up the value chain and make sure that you're adding value to your customers and ultimately your organization as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
When are you going to mentor me?
Give me a call if you've got time.
I would make the time, but like I said at the start, Core Team, I founded it in 2019, and we've been growing steadily. And when I looked at the market, I saw there was perhaps a gap, something that a recruiter could fill. And people of a recruitment background don't do management consultancies, and we wanted to prove that wrong, and we went there and did it, and we're now growing it. I wanted to grow it as it is for the next decade, but looking at the way technology is changing, I know we're going to have to evolve over the next 2 years. So yeah, it's I think it's taken me 5 years probably to accept me and my role. To be honest, it's for so long I just felt like an imposter in my role, and even I think I was speaking to somebody the other day that this was probably the first Workday Rising I went to. After it's the 8th one in total, but the first one I went to where I actually felt, no, I belong here.
Yeah.
So I know that the next 5 years, 10 years for us are really, really exciting, and I am going to take chances. We are going to go for chances, and yeah, it's not a joke question. I will definitely be calling you.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy to pick up with you. But I think your piece there about feeling sort of comfortable. That's so important. That you always probably have a slight level of discomfort, but to be comfortable and as much as you can in who you are and what you do, it does set the tone for the rest of the organization as well.
Yeah, and you can tell that probably in the uncertainty. Probably in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th year there was a bit of uncertainty, and then last year I sort of started to find myself a little bit. And now I just want to take on the world. So, we're building our own products and doing loads of other things. But look, bringing it back to you, it's been amazing talking to you. If there's one tip that you would give to somebody that wants to go out there and make something for themselves, or maybe they are stuck and they've got too many people in their ears advising them what to do, because you can get that way, right? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think ultimately, you can hear lots of competing advice, and I think people overcomplicate things as well, or they can do. Not everyone does. I'm a fairly simple guy. I'll listen to people, but I'll make my own mind up about things as well. So it's how do you distill that down into something straightforward? But also, when you're speaking to people, leverage the people around you. I mean, leverage in a positive way. How do you do more together? It's like it goes back to that expression: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So how can you work with the other people around you to help be successful?
Well, Paul, you've got a good team around you, so you do.
I've definitely had to. I'm off the same. I learned it late. I tried to set up my first business on my own when I was 30, and because I wanted it all to myself. And exactly what you said happened. I went slow. I tried to go fast, tried to go out on my own, and tried for 3 years, didn't work. It's loads of gaps in my knowledge. Went back to work, filled those gaps, came back, tried again. But there's nothing that was going to stop me from trying. So, I believe in you. I tell everybody when I meet them, say when I'm sitting in a management meeting or a senior leadership meeting, I'm quite often the dumbest person in the room, which is great. I learn so many new things every day.
Yeah, totally.
Anything you want to, any wisdom you want to pass on to anybody? Anything you want to ask us?
Oh, I don't know if I've got too much wisdom to pass on. You've really been quite flattering in your comments about me.
There's only I guess there's only a handful of people in the whole of England that have built businesses that are 100 billion plus or going on to the sort of revenues that you guys are getting on. So you deserve it, and I go, I'm not going to stop. So, Paul, over to you, Luke.
Over to you, Lauren.
Over to me.
Lauren does the wrap up. Sorry.
Yeah, I did the wrap
I
up.
missed last week, Russell, so I completely forgot the whole.
I was just worried this is going to end up going to me for a wrap up.
That would have been a great idea.
Yeah,
maybe you should come and host the list.
Yeah. No, I want to, first of all, thank you, Russell, for taking the time out of your day for joining us on the podcast. It's been really insightful to hear your story and your background. I suppose the only question we have for you before we wrap up is what's next for Russell Sloan? Or can we, or is it a secret?
No, it's not too many secrets with me. So I'm continuing to work with them still. They're an interesting stage. The company will become chair there in the next few weeks. Doesn't mean an awful lot different, to be honest, in lots of regards. Other than that, I'm on the lookout now for other new executive roles as well. So I've got a few lines of conversation open, which I'm exploring. So for me, that's exciting. What next? Don't know. Don't know, but we'll see what comes along. And it's one of those things where, again, I want to go into the right role, sort of leading an organisation. So we'll see what appears probably early in the new year, hopefully.
Yeah, I have no doubt you will go on to just be as successful as you are, Russell. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in today. And if you enjoyed this, we'll see you again in a few weeks' time. And if you didn't like it, we'll still be here given the math that doesn't add up. Thank you all.
Thanks for having me along, everybody.
Thanks, Russell.